Hi, I'm Claire and this is my reading wrap-up for April and May 2016. I didn't do a full wrap-up for April because I got really busy at my work and just a little bit slower on the video making front, but because I was so busy, I ended up not reading as much, and so I don't actually have that many things to talk about, but I still read 8 things in the last 2 months, so let's get started. First, I read Saga Volume 5 and Bitch Planet Book 1 Extraordinary Machine. And those two I've already talked about in more detail in my comic books review video, where I reviewed these two as well as Descender Volume 1, and I will link that video in the description box below. Both of those comics I was kind of so on. They both had things that I liked and things that I didn't. Next, I listened to the audiobook of the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, and this audiobook ate a large portion of my month of April. I really enjoyed it, but it took me a while to get into it because the first section of the book is written in a second person point of view, and whilst it's written well and it works, it is sufficiently strange that it took me a while to get into the book and the story. We follow the stories of Demaya, Cyanet and Essun, and we open with Essun, who is the one in a second person point of view. She has just lost her children. Her husband has killed one of her children and taken the other away, so naturally she goes after the husband to try and find her children. Then we have the story of Demaya, who is a young girl who has some magic that she can't really control, and it's taboo in that society, so she is taken away by someone who will be mentoring her in her magic so that she can learn how to control it. And we also follow the story of Cyan, who is a mid-level magic user who is going away to do some more training and do some work with a level 10 magic user, and he can do things with the magic that she didn't even know were possible to do at all, but they also hate each other. Those are the 3 main narratives that we follow, and I can't say much more about those without being massively spoilery. But I really did enjoy the world building in this book and how the magic functions and what we learn about it. A few months ago I read The Traitor Baru Cormorant, and I talked about how I didn't really feel like the twist in that novel was convincing. There is something of a twist as well in the 5th season, and again, non-spoilery vagueness, sorry about that. But I do actually feel like this was done really well and it was convincing, and when it finally came out what the twist was, it suddenly made all the sense in the world. One thing it does have in common with The Traitor Baru Cormorant though is that it is pretty brutal and violent. It is a novel about oppression in many ways, and it doesn't shy away from all the terrible things. My next read was Forest of Memory by Mary Robinette Kowal. This one is one of the Tor.com novellas, and I've got an advanced review copy here. I enjoyed this, but not as much as I thought I would. However, I do think that it's a fascinating book because it does some really interesting things with the narrative. I am going to be filming a joint review of this book and also Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, which is also a Tor.com novella, very shortly, so you can expect these two to make a reappearance on the channel. So I won't talk about it too much, but what I will say is I enjoyed this a lot more on an intellectual level than I did on an emotional level, and emotion is what I'm used to from Mary Robinette Kowal, so it was a bit weird, but I definitely thought it was worth a read. Then, like I said, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This is her book about what happens to children that come out of portal fantasies. What happens to Alice after she comes out of Wonderland? What happens to the Pevensey children after they get spat out of Narnia? It's about a boarding school that takes in children that have been in kind of secondary worlds, magical worlds, and they come back and no one believes that they've been away in magical worlds, and there is this kind of haven of a boarding school for them where they can go. But again, I will be talking about this more in my upcoming review. I read one more novella in May, and that was Perfect State by Brandon Sanderson. This one was up for a BookTube SFF award, which is why I read it. I'm gonna try to explain the premise of this one, but please bear with me if it's getting a bit complicated. The title Perfect State comes from the fact that it's set in a universe where every living human person has a perfect world created for them. Our main character is kind of an emperor king type of figure, but he's also a bit bored because he knows that, you know, everything that he's done and everything that he's achieved, even though he's done it himself, it still only happened because the simulation wanted to give him a perfect universe to be in, and he had to be this hero, so that's how it happened. It's a bit difficult to explain like that in a condensed way. It makes sense when you read the story. I thought it was an interesting premise. I didn't love where Sanderson went with it. I thought that it lacked a little bit of resonance at the end. I was kind of unimpressed with this one overall. I didn't find any problems with it, but I also didn't think that it was exciting or thrilling or particularly memorable. The fact that the main character is a guy whose innermost desires have given him this world in which he's the emperor and he's this benevolent ruler of everyone below him kind of doesn't really ingratiate him to me, because I'm not sure that if there was a machine creating a world specifically made for my desires, it would spit out this like pseudo-medieval setting. It would probably be a world entirely made of chocolate, let's be honest. And then finally, I read Uprooted by Naomi Novik, and I loved it a lot. The story is about Agnieszka, who gets selected by the dragon, who is the wizard who protects her valley from the kind of evil lurking in the wood. She gets selected by the dragon to come and serve him in his tower for 10 years. She's not quite sure what serving the dragon for 10 years really entails, but when she arrives in the tower, she finds that she's able to do some magic, and it kind of goes from there. I really enjoy the world building and the writing style in this book. It really takes roots from fairy tale, kind of traditional storytelling. This is based on Eastern Europe and particularly Poland. I finished this very shortly before filming this video, so it's a bit difficult for me to be completely coherent about it because it hasn't had time to stew yet, but I loved it. It was great. And speaking of Naomi Novik, I'm going to be rereading her Temeraire series starting in June. I'm doing a buddy read with my friend Kay, who is at Kay Taylor Ray on Twitter, and we're also hopping on the bandwagon of the read along that Lisa is hosting at her blog Over the Effing Rainbow. So I will leave a link to that in the description box below if you would like to participate. I loved the Temeraire series when I first discovered it. I read the first 4 or 5 books. The 9th book is coming out really soon. That's the final book in the series. So I am just looking forward to rereading the ones that I've already read and then discovering the ones that I haven't read yet, and finally seeing a conclusion to that series, because I really enjoyed it back in the day when I first read it. And finally, my current audiobook that I'm listening to right now is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. This is a collection of 3 short stories, The Tales of Dunk and Egg, which are in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. They just happen before the main stories. It's about a hedge knight called Sir Duncan the Tall, also known as Dunk, and his page Egg, who is in fact Aegon of House Targaryen, one of the heirs to the crown. Those stories are really great. They have been in the lore of Song of Ice and Fire for a while. They're not new stories, but I hadn't read them before. I'd only kind of heard about them. They're just really fun to listen to. It's nice to have something new in that world. So that's it. Those were the books that I read in April and May of 2016. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've read any any of these, or if you have any comments or questions about them. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out the sidebar right here for more videos. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.